And just to note, that story was about the Housing Australia Future Fund as opposed to the two housing bills passed last week. That's the programme for this evening. Thank you very much for your company. See you tomorrow. Good night.
Tonight, military personnel found guilty of sexual offences to face mandatory expulsion as the government promises reforms. Also tonight, a suspected gunman on the loose after a double shooting kills two south of Melbourne. A bikie gang leader charged over a record 2-ton cocaine bust. And Woolworths workers picket a Melbourne warehouse, leaving some shelves empty. Good evening, Girish Sawlani with ABC News, coming to you from the land of the Wurundjeri people. Sexual offenders will be removed from the Defence Force under a sweeping overhaul to combat the crisis of suicide in the Australian military. The government has accepted almost all recommendations from a landmark Royal Commission and will establish a new agency to drive and monitor changes. Here's Defence correspondent Andrew Green. Here are the top stories on ABC News. Military staff will face mandatory expulsion for sexual offences as the government responds to a landmark Royal Commission. The Commonwealth has accepted most of the 122 recommendations of the Royal Commission into defence and veterans' suicide, promising real and enduring reform. It also pledged an inquiry into sexual offences in the military, but rejected a proposal to award similar compensation for injuries regardless of where they occurred. A manhunt continues for a suspected gunman after two people were shot dead in a house on the Mornington Peninsula south of Melbourne. Police believe the man is one of two people who went to the house before a fight broke out and the other person was killed, along with a male resident. Police say the leader of a Comanchero bikie gang has been charged over Australia's largest ever cocaine seizure. A transnational syndicate is alleged to have attempted to import 2.3 tons of cocaine seized off the Queensland coast after the boat carrying the drugs broke down. The Comanchero's Brisbane vice president was among 11 men and 2 youths arrested in connection with the conspiracy. And 200 workers are picketing a Woolworths distribution centre in Melbourne as the supermarket giant struggles to keep the city's shelves stocked. They're among 1,800 employees striking nationwide as the United Workers' Union seeks better pay and conditions. It's also calling on Woolworths to drop a minute-by-minute monitoring system it says takes away workers' humanity. A national childcare provider has been accused of withholding thousands of dollars in pay and superannuation from early childhood educators at centres across Canberra. It's prompted the resignation of more than a dozen educators, which will effectively close at least one centre this week. Meanwhile, widespread stress leave taken by other staff today saw another juniors childcare centre forced to shut its doors. Let's have a look at tomorrow's weather around the country. Showers and warm conditions in Melbourne and Sydney tomorrow. Not much cooler for Canberra. Partly cloudy in Brisbane, Darwin to see a shower or two. Cloudy in Perth, a mild day ahead for Adelaide, and showers for Hobart. And that is the latest from ABC News. Do stay with us for the business, and I'll be right back after that with The World. I'm Girish Sawlani. Bye for now.
Sunday 7:30 on ABC and ABC iView.
Good evening, it's Monday the 2nd of December. Our top stories. Hunter Biden vows he won't take his pardon for granted after the US president says he was singled out by Republicans. Syrian and Russian jets strike Idlib after rebels seize the city of Aleppo in just a matter of days. Tear gas and fireworks as protests continue in Georgia after the government shelves talks over joining the EU. And negotiators fail to reach a treaty in global talks on reducing plastic pollution. You're watching The World. Hello, I'm Girish Sawlani. Good to have your company. Also tonight, as more arrests are made in Laos, we'll speak to a doctor who's working to help people avoid and survive methanol poisoning. Well, Donald Trump has called President Joe Biden's decision to pardon his son an abuse and miscarriage of justice. Hunter Biden was facing lengthy jail sentences over tax evasion and a gun charge. Despite previously promising not to intervene, Joe Biden says he's been forced to act because his son's cases were politically motivated. You're watching The World, the top stories we are following tonight. Hunter Biden receives a presidential pardon for gun and tax charges as Joe Biden says his son was unfairly prosecuted. Syrian and Russian airstrikes hit insurgent-held areas after the rebels' shock seizure of Aleppo. And protests continue in Georgia against the ruling party after a decision to suspend EU membership talks. Well, the rebels' surprise seizure of Aleppo comes not only as a hit to the Assad regime, but also to Vladimir Putin. As Syria's most powerful ally in the civil war, the reignition of the years' dormant conflict could see Russia lose valuable influence in the region. Here's Global Affairs editor John Lyons. Let's recap our top stories before we go. The US President Joe Biden pardons his son Hunter in the final weeks of office, saying that the case against him was politically motivated. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad vows to crush the rebels after government forces lost control of Aleppo in the northwest. And protests continue across Georgia as opposition grows to a decision to freeze European Union membership talks. And that is your world for tonight. You can always watch the show on iView, and more world news and interviews can be found at the ABC's YouTube channel. I'm Girish Sawlani, off with the Monday Blues, and I'll see you Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Tomorrow on News Breakfast, we chat to British comedy favourite, author and playwright Ben Elton as he returns to our stages with a new stand-up special.
And we've got your Christmas wrapped up literally as we find out the best way to parcel your prezzies. We'll see you then.
Tonight, military personnel found guilty of sexual offences to face mandatory expulsion as the government promises reform. Also tonight, a suspected gunman on the loose after a double shooting kills two south of Melbourne. A bikie gang leader charged over a record 2-ton cocaine bust. And Woolworths workers picket a Melbourne warehouse, leaving some shelves empty. Good evening, Girish Sawlani with ABC News, coming to you from the land of the Wurundjeri people. Sexual offenders will be removed from the Defence Force under a sweeping overhaul to combat the crisis of suicide in the Australian military. The government has accepted almost all recommendations from a landmark royal commission and will establish a new agency to drive and monitor changes. Here's Defence correspondent Andrew Green. And let's check tomorrow's weather around the country. Showers and warm conditions in Melbourne and Sydney tomorrow. Not much cooler in Canberra. Partly cloudy in Brisbane. Darwin to see a shower or two. Cloudy in Perth. A mild day ahead for Adelaide and showers for Hobart. And that is the latest from ABC News. I'm Girish Sawlani. Have a good night.
Disability campaigner Ellie Mae Barnes